Strong, soft landing, or headed for a recession? The economy. So what's the real deal anyways? I've invited Don Barnett, Director of Sales and Marketing from LondonHouse in Chicago on for a temperature check. How does he rate the current conditions? What keeps him up at night? And what are some of his best tips for sales professionals? Check this out. Hey, Don, I appreciate you spending time with me on the Instinct Show. I've got Don Barnett. He's with the LondonHouse in Chicago. Welcome to the show, man.
Good, thanks. I appreciate it, Cory. By the way, great name for a podcast.
It gets back to my 90s, a little bit of my 90s roots. I don't know if I'm in sync, little excerpt in there. So I appreciate the shout out on there. We're going to talk about the economy a little bit. And there's been a lot of differing conversations regarding is it good, bad, sideways, an economic temperature check for hoteliers. My first question to you is, how would you rate the economic conditions right now?
The best analogy I could think of is it's like we're in a car with no brakes, but we have nothing but clear road for as far as the eye can see. There's little things popping up here and there, but you have to ask yourself, how much gas do we still have left in the tank? And is it going to gradually slow down over time? Or is the car just going to crash and flip over? So we've had experts at the beginning of the year, and they're starting to change their tune where there was the talk of recession and stagflation. But we've seen inflation go from 9% a year ago to 3% now. So that's worked out. And the housing market remains really hot. Unemployment remains really low, and travel demand is as high as it's ever been. It continues to break records on holidays. So I think some markets are already seeing 2019 levels of business, your Florida, your resort markets, things like that. And it's exciting because Chicago, we've been doing gangbusters, but we're forecasted to reach 2019 levels in 2025. So we still have this upwards trajectory over the next couple of years. Granted, we don't have anything catastrophic happen. Overall, with the economy, I'm cautiously optimistic. There's little red flags that pop up here and there. We had some tech layoffs earlier in the year that were pretty significant. And McDonald's they closed their offices for a week so they could make announcements of layoffs. There's been little red flags here and there with the layoffs. Something we saw was, despite conventions touting that they would have more attendance than they've ever had, we saw that the shoulder nights were softer than they had ever been. We saw room nights wash out a little bit from that. I think everybody should keep an eye on attendance at events. One of the things Cvent had predicted this year was that there would be more events, but less attendees. And there's been times where we've seen that. We've also seen times when groups might tighten their belt a bit. They might not spend what they used to spend, or cancel a lunch or things like that. Oh, they're going to be on their own for that. Little red flags like that to keep an eye on. But overall, I think especially the hospitality industry still has an upward trajectory.
Love the optimism, man. I'll definitely confirm that sentiment. A lot of our properties are still doing very well. In fact, some of them have had record years. However, what I am a little concerned about, and what I'm really concerned is that the media has not really mentioned any of what I found. Victoria's Secret filing bankruptcy. Rolex has stopped production altogether. Nike's had huge second quarter layoffs. Gold's Gyms filed bankruptcy. We've had the retail apocalypse. They're talking of commercial real estate collapse. There's definitely some signs that are troubling. A lot of the economists talk about the inverted yield curve. There's been, in fact, I think it was been 16 consecutive quarters of economic indicators that have been pointing down. A lot of these signs have not even happened in the Great Depression, which is, it's definitely troubling. And I'm confused as anybody. It's like you go to one area for your information, it tells one story, and then others, you dig a little bit deeper, and it just makes you wonder really what the true pulse of what's going on. Have you heard of any of the things that I mentioned? Even Starbucks, they're going to close 400 stores.
I recently read, I don't want to say the wrong company, but there was a luxury retailer that was reforecasting their annual, as people are on spending on those type of, and so actually had reported that they're seeing a shift in consumer behavior as far as buying things. People are buying more things they need versus things they want. So they're seeing a shift that way. So yeah, I see the same thing that you're talking about.
It's funny you said that the needs versus the wants. And they, even an economist said, we might be going into a situation where we've never had inflation and deflation, where the prices of the things that you need are continuing to go up and the things that you don't need are going down, which is a very interesting dynamic, right?
Yeah. I do feel for the hit that the hospitality industry took during the pandemic, I feel like we have more runway than some other companies and other retailers, in my opinion, just because I think everybody still remembers what it was like to be secluded and everybody wanted to get out and travel. And I think that is still very relevant, and going out and having experiences is all still very relevant. And I think if there's a cutback on things that people are spending on, I think travel is going to be one of the last things that people start to really cut.
That's a really good take, because as we went through that pandemic, a lot of people were saying value experiences over tangible material goods. Maybe you're spot on all these other things. They might not need the Rolex, or forget the gym membership. Whatever I've got less in discretionary income, we're going to take the family on a trip because that's what really matters most. So I hadn't even thought about that. That's an amazing insight there. You're at a DOSM at a prestigious large property in Chicago. So what keeps you up at night? Either fear or excitement?
This may sound like a curveball because it's not very property specific, but I've got one of each for you. Something that's really concerning to me, big picture, is the weather. Just the extreme weather that we're consistently seeing in the news. I watch the news every night, and it's just constant flooding. And right now, the heat waves, the heat dome that's everywhere, it's affecting flights. So I think that's a big concern. I think more and more companies are going to have to take climate risk into consideration as they're planning things. The more we see this, the more they're going to have to consider, do we want to go to California with all these wildfires going on, for example? Or we do our annual meeting every July, but it's 130 degrees in this area we normally go to. So I think that could cause shifts, and that could affect the hospitality arena significantly. The other thing that concerns me too with the weather is Chicago has been really fortunate this year that I feel like we've been in this Goldilocks zone where we haven't had too much as far as major flooding or a major heat wave, things like that, as opposed to some of the other locations. But what does concern me is you may have a big group scheduled and all of a sudden you get 11 inches of rain. You get 3 months worth of rain in one day, like some places have, causes all this flash flooding, and now all of your business is canceled. And it's a force majeure on top of it. It's an act of God type of thing. So now you're just out. Poof, there goes, you're making your budget for that month because that had to cancel. So the weather is a major concern. On the flip side, something I'm excited about, and again, more big picture, I'm excited for travel planning, is AI. I'm excited about the possibilities of what AI can do. When it comes to travel, it could really revolutionize the way we're travel planning. For example, instead of going onto a website and putting in your city and then going through all the filters, you could, if you have a chatbot, and this is something that like Google is working on right now, you could have a chatbot that you say, I want to go to Chicago. I want to stay at a hotel that's a top 10 on TripAdvisor for under $300 for these dates. Go. And it'll spit back at you. Boom. Here's 3 hotels under $300 that are in the top 10 and makes it that easy for you. I'm excited for that type of functionality and efficiency.
It's funny you'd mentioned that because as someone in marketing, obviously very conscious of search and how products and properties are found online. That exact example, my partner, Susan Tucker here at Lure, she is literally traveling to Europe right as we speak. And she used ChatGPT and she said, please give me a 5-day itinerary that is not necessarily well known or a main attraction. And she prompted a lot of different details, and it gave her back the most incredible itinerary. And she verified them, and she's actually using that on her trip. And she was just absolutely blown away on how incredibly creative it was and very practical and efficient on how it all put together. So I support that sentiment. Absolutely. I think AI it's a optimistically scary revolution that we're headed into, because there's definitely some things that have come up. I don't know if you've heard of the story of ChatGPT, or I think it was Bard, that actually pushed back on one of the users that was using it in kind of a not so friendly manner. So there's definitely been some things to consider as that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
A double-edged sword for sure. The potential we already have a lot of misinformation out there. So the potential for that and impersonation and fraud and things like that. I think there's a whole dark side to it as well. But on the flip side, one of the most exciting things I read was a medical thing where the human eye can only do so much, but you have AI take a look at an MRI and it sees things that the human eye can't. Definitely. And discovers things like cancer 90% of the time, as opposed to a doctor who might see it 50% of the time. So things like that are incredible.
That's awesome. Hey, you've already before we jumped on here, you had some great insights for some DOSMs or some sales managers that may be experiencing some softening right now. In fact, I've talked to several already that are a little concerned. So I'd love to hear some insights or some tips from you, Don.
The best advice I could give to anyone in the sales arena is to stay top of mind consistently. Absolutely. For one, your hotel should be on social media on a regular basis. It blows my mind when I see hotels that have gone 120 weeks without posting, or they're just not doing it very well. So it's really a worthwhile investment to be on social media. It's an opportunity to have a two-way conversation at times with your audience, but people are following you because they want to follow you. They're invested. Talk to them, show them what you're up to. The other thing is, not enough people are doing personal branding. LinkedIn, we had talked about that before, and I don't think enough people take advantage of the opportunity that's there. And I think it's a combination of things. I think people don't know what's possible. For example, I've been posting almost daily for a year now, and I'm now reaping some amazing benefits from it. Leads. I'm getting leads to my email at work. I'm getting leads via LinkedIn. We formed a partnership with a major company in the city for something, debating whether or not I should give any details on that, but we formed a really cool partnership, two of them in fact. There's a new casino coming into Chicago. That's one of the things we've got a partnership on. And what was the last thing I was going to say? You get invited on things like this, like podcasts. It's an opportunity to get in front of a bigger audience, but I think people don't know the value that comes from it. Maybe people don't want to put in the work because it is a marathon. You can't expect immediate results. I think people are intimidated by what type of content to put out. You want to try to give people value, and you also want to engage with other people's content as well. And I think too many people are worried what people will think. I have what's called the eye roll threshold, is a theory I have, which is when you do something like this where you're trying to personally brand yourself and you're posting regularly, your immediate circle will make fun of you. Then you've got the second circle of hell, which is coworkers that might roll their eyes and say, oh, who does this guy think he is? But then you cross over that threshold and into the third level, where you're reaching people that maybe you used to work with. They're like, hey, what is that guy up to? Or a client you used to work with that's like, oh, I remember working with that guy. And then there's this fourth circle, which is people you don't know at all that are interested. If they follow you, again, if they're following you, they're interested in what you have to say. And this is where you're making new connections and new collaborations and finding new clients. So again, like the social media at hotels, it blows my mind that more people aren't more invested in things like LinkedIn, where there's a lot of opportunity there.
Don, what a great illustration. That was fantastic. Hotel salespeople undeniably would support that relationships are important, right? That's probably one of the most, right? How did you and I meet?
Exactly, LinkedIn.
I've never met you in person, right? And this is where the misconception comes into play. I still think there's a stigma on there, and we've tried, it's been years now. A lot of salespeople still think LinkedIn is a glorified resume only, right?
Yeah.
They only pop in there when there's a job change or their hotel has won a Forbes award. It's all about pushing stuff out. And we got to rewire that to get them to think LinkedIn is like that MPI event. It's the same thing. I commented on your post, right? You don't even need to post. You can do this without posting anything. Just interject yourself on somebody else's comment. Start a conversation like you would walk up to somebody at a group of 4 people at an MPI event, add some value to the conversation, start some small talk, take it off to a DM or even a phone conversation, jump on Zoom, boom.
Yeah. And that's the perfect way to do it. I think the other thing people do incorrectly on LinkedIn is what they call pitch slapping, where you get the DM where they're just going straight into their sales pitch, and it's, no, that's not how you do it. Build that relationship with somebody first and comment on their things. Hey, maybe you reach out to them and say, hey, you were talking about XYZ. Check out this book I read on that topic, or have you read this book because it's phenomenal. And then you start to build a relationship that way.
Salespeople need to think of networking on LinkedIn as dating. Same thing. Too much, too soon can blow everything, right?
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
You can't walk up and ask a person's hand in marriage without the dating process. You got to start with small conversations, small chat, work up just like you would you wouldn't walk up to somebody in person, shake someone's hand, and then pitch them on your product or service or your venue. You would start with some small talk. It's the same process. You and I have talked about some of the frustration of trying to break through and explaining some of these things, because I think sometimes when we try to make it a tangible example and take the online element of it and make it a human to human connection, regardless of how the medium is, if it's in person or online, it's the same thing.
And then the other thing too, if you're posting consistently, and there's a lot of people that are just viewing, they're not liking, they're not commenting, but I can't tell you how many times I get an email from somebody that will reference something I talked about 3 weeks ago on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I didn't even know you were looking at my stuff. For example, I told a story about my sister she had stolen a Pearl Jam ticket of mine from the first show I ever went to. Nice. So I told this story. And then 3 weeks later, I have what would become a future client tell me, hey, by the way, Pearl Jam, you're going to go see him in September. And that commonality is where you really make these bonds with people. And now you're top of mind. It's all about being top of mind.
You're absolutely right. And being top of mind is harder these days with this, right?
Yep. Yeah.
You need to be in the feed. The need to be in the feed, and because our attention spans are absolutely obliterated, it's consistency. And that's the big, and getting back to what I was talking about before, some of these people pop into LinkedIn, it's every 3 months to announce something. And that's not how you build a relationship in person, online, whatever the case may be. Man, great conversation. Don, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how can people find you, by the way?
Yeah, born and raised in the Chicagoland area, so I've been here my whole life. I will say, if I never saw snow again, I'd be perfectly fine with that. It's a cute little novelty at Christmas time, but I do love Chicago. It's my favorite city in the world. I've been at LondonHouse. October will be 6 years. It's the best job I've ever had. Best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm on there pretty consistently. Sometimes I'll take a weekend off, but that's a great place to find me.
Fantastic. I couldn't agree with you more on that. LinkedIn's the place to be, and that's the only place to be. That's what's beautiful about it. Hey, I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with me, and I can't wait to have you on. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, thank you, Cory. I appreciate it.